The concept for EPARTRADE is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for EPARTRADE is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and to get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to epartrade.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of EPARTRADE. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Good morning. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of EPARTRADE, the global platform for the performance and racing industry. Welcome to Race Industry Now, the technical and business webinar series from EPARTRADE presented by ARP. With me this morning is Judy Kinn, the co-founder of EPARTRADE and 3 times NASCAR crew chief champion, motorsport personality and legend, Geoff Hammond. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Judy. How are you doing this morning? And always great to see you, Francis.
Always, Geoff.
I'm excited about today. I've known Geoff at Full Race for probably over 10 years now. Been to his facility, and I have never seen so many turbos in my life. I'm very impressed by his operations, and we're very grateful and proud to have had Full Race be part of our first ever Race Industry Week as a sponsor.
That's true. I think it was probably one of the first ones to sign up, actually,
yes.
Right? Excellent. So I am getting a signal from our producer, Reed Keneski, and we're going to bring Geoff, Matt, and Nero on the screen. Geoff will let you take over. So it's 2 webinars back to back for you. and so we're going to be talking turbo. I see Geoff coming in. I see Matt, and Nero should be in very soon. Good morning, Geoff.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Okay, Matt is in and Nero should be in any second. So perfect, beautiful. So Geoff Hammond, you're in charge and we'll see you in 55 minutes.
All right, sounds good, Francis. Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Doing really well. How are you doing, Geoff?
Great.
I'm doing really well. Doing really well. Mathew, how about yourself?
I'm great, thanks.
So guys, you know, I'm going to be dead honest with you. The only experience I've got with turbos is the one on my Duramax Chevrolet that I've worked on to try to, you know, pick up a little more bottom end torque and a little top end at the same time. And it's very limited. So I'm really looking forward to today because I think I'm going to learn something, and hopefully, you know, a lot of our folks that are tuning in, our attendees, will feel the same by the end of this program. And again, I'm gonna kind of like do what I do best. Shut up and tell you, roll them. Whatever you got, throw it at us.
All right, great. Well, I think Matt is going to start with a presentation, and then we can go into some conversation after that.
Okay, sounds great.
I'll just get my screen sharing set up here. Okay, I think my screen should be live. Is everyone seeing that?
Looks good here. It looks good on my end.
Awesome. So today we want to talk with you about turbo system design and more specifically, 3 of the mistakes that the aftermarket industry is making in turbo system design. Right now, there's 3 common mistakes that we're seeing all the time, and I'm going to talk to you about what they are and how you can avoid them or correct them. As mentioned, my name is Mathew Velders. I'm a mechanical engineer, and product design, visualization, data, and analysis are what keep me awake at night, followed only by my passion for the industry I work in. I was actually reading about full race and car magazines before I was old enough to drive, and now I'm ecstatic to work towards realizing my vision of well-designed, well-supported, and well-marketed products that avoid the mistakes we've all made at some point. So we are Full Race Motorsports, and we've been in business since 2003. Over the years, our partner's obsession with turbocharging has helped us forge relationships with this amazing group of people that I've got up on my screen here now. We get positive feedback like this from our customers every day, and it's what keeps us going. And we know that our customers attend and watch these webinars, so we wanted to stop and say thank you to them. We're dedicated to keeping you happy. In the conversations we've had with our customers all over the world, we've seen the thinking about turbo kits change over the years. Designing a turbo kit used to be a lot less exacting. And if you made a quality exhaust manifold, customers would be willing to fabricate, grind, cut, or customize a kit to fit their specific needs. But that's not the case anymore. Customers nowadays expect kits to be fully bolt-on with minimal permanent modifications, detailed install guides, and data that shows what the kit will deliver and the tangible performance increases they're expecting. At Full Race, we're different. We're specialists. Even though we're a pretty small company, we use these tools to develop and improve our products every single day. Our customers want to get down the track at the fastest possible speed, and they want to push their hardware without worry that it will be reliable. So we use SolidWorks CAD software, Creaform 3D scanners, and AEM data logging hardware to create turbocharging products that produce real-world performance gains. And not using these processes and products can cause a lot of headaches. So starting off with mistake number 1, historically, people in the performance market could fabricate a product and have confidence that it would fit. But that's not always the case anymore. I've kind of created a bit of a bad infomercial here, but it kind of highlights a lot of the common problems you'll see with turbo kits that have been fabricated without correct attention to detail. You can have dipstick clearance issues, wires melting, turbos hitting manifolds, wastegates hitting a turbo, and the list could probably go on for the rest of the day. One example of this is moving part interference. It's difficult to anticipate without a CAD model, and this picture is an example of a linkage that we designed that we realized was going to have some clearance issues, and we were able to make a change and save thousands of dollars and customer frustrations. The second mistake that we see a lot is even if your shop uses 3D CAD models, not augmenting those models with 3D scanning can cause even more headaches. Modern engine bays are cramped with tons of wires, hoses, and other metal obstructions, which can make installing a large turbocharger, wastegate, blow-off valve, piping, plumbing, and associated sensors in a modern vehicle much more difficult than it used to be. We've definitely been guilty of making this mistake before because it's not easy or cheap to get a complete engine bay scan, but the investment is well worth it because it allows problems to be found before they pop up, and it reduces the number of surprises that you'll come across during the design process. At Full Race, we use and absolutely love the Creaform HandyScan 700. It's a handheld red laser light scanner, and it allows us to create 3D models from physical parts very quickly. With it, we can accurately scan engine bays and engines, and it's worth noting that for the best results, it's better to pull the engine out of the engine bay to do the scan. The 3D scanned engine bay allows us to quickly determine if the part we have in mind is possible to actually physically fit. Obviously, this oversized EFR is not going to fit. And with the scan, you don't need to disassemble the car a second time to check a new idea or to check a product revision. 3D scanning can also be used to confirm that the parts that are being produced match what you've designed. In this case, we've scanned the head flange for a F-150/Raptor turbo manifold and can verify that the flatness meets our spec. Now, it's easy to assume that bigger will be better or that a part is worth replacing. But good data should drive the decisions you make about the products you develop and bring to market. A customer's trust is easy to lose and it's hard to gain back again. So we believe that transparency with data builds trust with our customers and gives them a window into our thought processes. We're working with AEM Electronics using their CD5 dash and their 22-channel data logger. It's a really cost-effective and proven way to collect data. There's many elaborate systems that are very expensive, but we've had really good results with AEM and happily recommend it to anyone who's developing performance products. So this is a little example of what you might like to do with a system like this. This slide shows engine speed as well as throttle position data that was taken from the ECU's CAN output. The second acceleration event is full throttle from about 4,500 RPM to 7,500 RPM. We've added some external sensors to the system, which have allowed us to log the intake manifold pressure as well as the compressor inlet pressure on the turbochargers. We've discovered that the intake system on a stock car, in this case an R32 GTR, was causing close to 1.5 psi of pumping losses. That may sound quite small, but these types of losses are the enemy on a turbo car, and they make the turbo work harder for the same output, which means you either produce more heat or you lose power. So you definitely need to create CAD models, you need engine bay scans and component scans, and you need to prove that your components work with data to back it up. So now I'd like to show you what engineering parts like this can accomplish. Our first case study outlines the Honda Civic Type R as well as Robin Schutz's Unlimited Class Pikes Peak car. Both applications needed an electronic internal wastegate actuator, which can be seen here, and they needed an EFR turbo, in this case a B2 series. So the electronic actuator doesn't fit on the turbo as is. It's much bigger and it has different requirements than the pneumatic actuator that comes on the turbocharger. The pneumatic actuators actually allow quite a bit of deflection as the linkage travels through its range. The electronic actuators can't tolerate any deflection. So this graphic here shows some of the deflection seen in the pneumatic actuator. We were able to reverse engineer this using SolidWorks, and it gave us a starting point for what we needed to design around in order to make an electronic actuator fit and not break because of the deflection needed. We developed a linkage that would allow us to cycle the system and ensure everything fit and didn't bind. We 3D printed the components and performed some dry runs. We tweaked and refined the design until it was successful. At this point, we had the confidence to tool up and begin production. This is an example of the documentation customers can access with this kit. It includes a packing list and a list of installation notes. And finally, this is the real world prototype that we've installed on a turbo for testing. The accurate boost control offered by this electronic actuator system helped Rob and Shoot become the overall winner of Pikes Peak Unlimited class 2 years in a row. So we're pretty proud of that result. Our second case study revolves around Toyota's new A90 Supra and the BMW B58 inline-six engine that it comes with. Now, this case study started off with Papadakis Racing and a global pandemic. Initially, our plan was to visit Steph in California, but the pandemic had other plans. That didn't slow us down though, and Steph was able to carry out the scanning at his facility while I worked on the design remotely from Canada. Once the designs were complete, the files were sent to Phoenix so that the manifold could be built from CAD. With the aid of 3D scanning and SolidWorks design software, we were able to produce 2 unique prototypes in time for competition. Shown here are Papadakis Racing's Frederick Osbo and Ryan Turk. Both of these vehicles are running full race twin scroll EFR turbo kits, and currently Frederick Osbo's B58 Supra is leading the 2021 Formula Drift points chase, relying on our hardware to go round after round. Now, this portion of the design process also had a sort of strange and unintended consequence, which is my mom becoming Frederick Osbo's #1 fan. Now, building a kit for a race car is very different than building a production kit that we would like to supply to customers. We laid out the groundwork with Papadakis, but we needed to ensure fitment on 2021 plus production Supras. And that's where Titan Motorsports comes in. They're a longtime partner of Full Race for all things 2JZ Supra, so they were a natural fit for the B58 Supra. And you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong later, Nero, but I believe you currently hold the quarter-mile record for the new Supras. So pretty awesome. And they believed enough in our vision that they shipped a Supra from Florida to Arizona to allow us to finish the R&D process on an actual street car. So this slide here shows the first portion of our Super Turbo kit, and it actually includes the components from the previous case study, which is the electronic wastegate actuator. So this is perfect for a car that wants to retain the OEM ECU. They can plug the electronic actuator directly in to the factory wiring harness and continue on very simply. But with Titan Motorsports, we're working on a more advanced external wastegate kit that will be the ultimate in power potential for the Supra. And you can see some of our initial 3D scans on the right-hand side of the slide here. So we've scanned the hood as well as the underside of the hood and the engine bay to make sure that there's no clearance issues with any of the coolant lines or wiring harnesses. Now, some companies try and serve everyone, but at Full Race, we like to serve the obsessed. So if you're a shop or a kit builder that specializes in anything turbocharged, please reach out to the team at Full Race and we'll get you set up with an account to provide the expertise you need. This is how you can reach us. We've got a brand new website. You can open a new browser tab and go to fullrace.com/wholesale and fill out the form to create an account, and we'll get you set up. Now I'd like to turn things over to Geoff and Nero to give a little bit of background on themselves and have a little discussion on the relationship between Full Race and the super project we're working on.
Well,
Go
thanks,
ahead,
Matt.
guys.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO at Full Race, and Matt Velders is my #1 engineer there. And we're really excited to work with Nero because we specialize in turbos. And so we kind of consider ourselves the turbo experts, whereas Nero, they specialize in Supras, and they are the Supra experts. And so what we try to do is find particular niches. As most of you guys know, this is a very fragmented industry. So somebody who specializes in Supras is probably not going to work on Fords, and that person is not going to work on Chevys, he's not going to work on Subaru. So at Full Race, we'd like to identify partners for each particular niche. And really, that's where Titan came in. They were the undisputed leader in Supras and 2JZ legacy Supras. And so now that as the B58 Supra is really becoming a thing, we needed a partner. And so Titan was a natural fit. So yeah, Nero, go ahead, give some background.
Yeah, so I'm the president of Titan Motorsports. I've known Geoff for probably about 20 years. We both started right around, I think, the same time. And I could say, even when we see each other at trade shows, we'd both be driving ourselves crazy because you had so many things going on. I mean, back then, I don't even think 10, 15 years ago, we could spend 5 minutes on a podcast. So things have obviously changed. Both of our businesses have become a lot more efficient. We do definitely specialize in the Supra, not only building and installing the parts here, but also on a mail order basis. So we have lots of customers worldwide that kind of want to buy our recipe or utilize us for part sources. Geoff and the team at Full Race came on board. They make a phenomenal product. A lot of almost excess engineering goes into the product, where you're going to have the least amount of issues or no issues to the end user. Our goal as a shop, we have a fab team, an installation team. We can modify something to make it fit if we have to. Nobody wants to, but our customers who are installing stuff in their own garage do not have that capability or even necessarily that knowledge. And so we need to be able to ship and sell a product that we're confident is going to fit and install relatively easily. I don't want to say plug and play, but a lot of the stuff is getting to that point where it literally just plugs and plays, and you're not modifying the factory chassis or having to modify the wastegate dump tube or some other part of the configuration. So that's what kind of brought us over to working with Full Race. We are two completely different businesses, as far as what we do, but we obviously both do lots of turbocharging. So partnering with them is honestly better than building the turbo kit in-house at Titan, because one, we wouldn't be able to possibly keep the quality that consistent, spend that much time to engineer it. But also once you're to that point and you have customers that are selling, we also can't produce that much quantity. So all those pieces are very important when you're dealing with a partner. And there's got to be a lot of trust, right? So like if we were new to Supras, Geoff probably would have been like, yeah, I'm not interested. I don't know who this guy is. So a lot of trust comes into play, and that just takes years of working with people to, continue to move up to those next steps.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Matt, I'm glad I've been reading your comments and everything. And folks, we know you got questions, but we wanted the guys to be able to go through their presentation so they could, give you an example of where they are, what they got going on, explain themselves. And Steve was curious about right after we got started about going back to the slides with the grass and explain a little bit more in detail. And then we have Jill sitting there, and she was assuming, or they wanted to know about your opinion as far as aftermarket stuff is concerned when it comes to 650 and versus 750 horsepower turbos. So you guys want to address those questions right there before we move on?
I'll speak to Jill's question real quickly. The 650 to 750 range, the answer is it depends. And it depends entirely on what the application is, how much displacement, how much engine RPM, how much boost. what's your altitude? There's actually a multitude of factors. I personally don't love the sound of a screaming external wastegate unless it's a dedicated racetrack car. And so I would tend to go toward internal wastegate for a street car and then, you know, external wastegate for a race car. But you can achieve both objectives with both wastegates. And, you know, realistically, if you're looking to do something, reach out to us and we can help make sure you get the right setup for what you need.
Perfect. Okay, I've moved back to the data logging slides here. So the primary goal of this test was to find out if the factory intake system was causing restriction or not. So the engine speed and throttle position graphs were just to sort of keep track of when an acceleration event is happening and what engine speed range we're running through. And then the pressure comparison, actually, I'll go to the graph that's a little bit more zoomed in. You can see most of the time, the data for turbo inlet 1 and 2 are hovering right around 0, which is atmospheric pressure. So under these conditions, the intake system isn't providing any pressure drop. However, once you get into higher RPM or higher boost, we start to see that the pressure at the compressor inlet is dropping below ambient pressure, which means the turbocharger is having to work extra hard to overcome the restriction in the inlet. So in this case, the OEM intake system has mass airflow sensors. It has that sort of like rubbery corrugated piping with lots of tight bends, and all of that contributes to pressure loss. So if you can mitigate that pressure loss, your turbo can work much more efficiently. So in this case, it would probably be worth producing a better intake system, because this is only at around stock power levels. And the higher the power levels are, the more airflow you're going to have through the system, and the worse this pressure drop is going to get. Hopefully that clears
Thank you, guys.
up.
All right, thank you. Hopefully, Steve, that gave you a little bit more information what you were looking for. And before we go any further, since we've kind of like we're touching on a couple things. I'm just watching your presentation. Very impressed with the Pikes Peak result. What about in a situation like that where you're going from elevation changes and stuff like that? How hard is it to keep up and make that thing perform? I mean, undoubtedly it performed at its peak, but is that a big challenge for you when you're going from basically sea level and going up and just like say, you just in and out of the throttle and asking it to, you know, give it all it's got for a long extended period of time?
Huge
Definitely.
difference at lower altitudes. As you go up the peak, the amount of air that's available to compress by the turbocharger is much less. And that means the turbocharger has to spin way faster to make the same amount of boost. And you absolutely can reach a point at which the turbo is spinning too fast, and that's called turbocharger overspeed. And the turbocharger can fail in catastrophic ways. And actually, I did another presentation with EPARTRADE a number of months ago. I will put a link in this thing later, but we talked about exactly that. And in fact, we used the Pikes Peak example. But it is really important if you're at elevation to match and physically do the math rather than just assume this guy on Facebook is running this thing and it works great. No, if you're at elevation, the numbers are critical.
Okay, very good. So question for all of you, I mean, really, what is the most rewarding, most challenging, and hardest part of creating and designing new products? I mean, you guys, I mean, it seems like y'all have just fallen into a unbelievable great opportunity for all of y'all to really kind of like go to the next level. And with all that being said, and y'all being in different locations, what are the challenges that you're faced with right now as far as making it happen? And at the same time, what's the most frustrating part about it?
I mean, what some of the challenges, you know, I would say is finding the right partners to, you know, see your same vision. And I'd say that goes almost with anything across any form of the business. So one of the easiest parts is once you've found that partner like Geoff with us with the A90 series is just shipping him the car, and then now it's his problem. So, and then he can work with us, in finding the solutions. The industry is also constantly changing. Every day there's a new product, there's new tuning. Like right now with the new Supra B58 platform, the tuning is constantly changing. So in a year from now, even though the turbochargers may still be this, same items, modern turbocharging, just being able to change things on the car that we weren't able to change now will change turbo combinations that we would use. To give you an example, with like the current B58 with the factory ECU, you're not able to raise the rev limiter. So obviously you put too big of a turbocharger and you're going to be out of the power band quite a bit. When we are able to, change the rev limiter and do a lot more tuning changes like that, then not only will some of the way the engines are assembled be configuration change, but also the size of the turbocharger will change as far as drag racing goes and looking for the maximum amount of performance.
Okay. Hey, I noticed, talking about your Supra relationship, with deal with Toyota and everything. And it looks like, going back and look at, a lot of stuff that's online, especially there at Titan, you guys, you work with a lot of imports, but yet I noticed you also have a relationship with Ford. Are they the only domestic, manufacturer that you guys are working with currently? And why did you wind up being with Ford?
As Nero just said, the whole trust component is big. This is a small industry. People think the auto industry is huge. It's not. It's small, and everybody knows each other. And so you really can't ever burn a bridge because you're not welcome back to the club. And so we've been doing this for 20 years. And really our relationship with Ford Warner, they are the OE manufacturer for Ford and the EcoBoost product line for the F-150s. So Ford came to us in 2009 and said, hey, we're working on this thing called EcoBoost. We're wondering if you prototype a turbo kit and, see what it does. And so we started working with them, and they got us some unbelievable data. CFD data that we really couldn't generate on our own. It required Ford's aerodynamics team to help us with it. So what Ford did is they came to us at an early stage. We created some prototypes, and they've worked with us by providing us vehicles and engines for our own development. I truthfully don't believe there's any other automaker that's in the United States actively pursuing turbos like them. Obviously, Chevy has some turbo plays. You got the small cars, you got the 2.7 4-cylinder. Now the Corvette ZR1, I think, or maybe 06 is supposed to be a twin turbo. But in general, Chevy's been a naturally aspirated V8 platform, and our specialty is turbochargers. We don't do superchargers, we don't do clutches or transmissions or engine builds. We just do turbos. And so by definition, we're going to work on platforms that are obsessed with turbos.
So Mathew, what's the thing that, as you were saying in the very beginning, you live and breathe and just sleep this stuff, 24/7. So what's the next step? What's the next thing that as we look behind you there, we see the turbos and the different ones. Where's the future? Where is it taking us? I mean, what's the next? I guess you might say, in my world, I'd call it a widget. What's the next widget?
I think looking well beyond this super project, the additive manufacturing and 3D printing is the next big thing. We do 3D printing in-house for test fitting of prototypes, and we have worked on a manifold for Papadakis Racing, actually, that was 3D printed in Inconel. Usable production-ready 3D prints are still a little bit far away for the aftermarket industry. It's happening in aerospace, but it's still very expensive. But I think the ability for shops to print production components in-house it's definitely the next big thing we've got our eyes on.
Okay. You were showing a map earlier in your presentation, and like you say, you guys you've gone everywhere. I mean, you're Australia, South America, Europe. is there one part of the world or one part of this country, United States, that is really starting to gravitate and race these, race turbochargers and are looking for your types of services more so than others? I mean, is the European market greater than the one here in the United States?
I think that you're absolutely right. The markets are different, and turbos have been in Europe, Asia, Australia, a whole lot more than they've been here. And more in terms of numbers, not so much, but in terms of percentage, there is just way more small displacement turbocharged engines outside. So the US is really, it's been growing and it's growing rapidly. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a fragmented industry. And so I feel like each region of the world is going to have different preferences. So in Japan, it's obviously going to be Japanese cars. And then in Europe, it's probably going to be European cars. Australia, Japanese cars. And, while they got US cars, they got Ford Falcons or Holden Commodores, like cars that never even really existed in the United States. So every market is fragmented and every part of the world is fragmented. And it again goes back to trust and partners. You just need to know the right people in the right places. And, you'll wake up 20 years later and you'll have customers in 100 countries like we do. And I think that it really comes back to the fact that we're specialists. By specializing in one specific area and just drilling deep, rather than taking the shotgun approach and going, wide and just spraying everything. If you take one niche and really, obsess over it for a long enough time, then you're going to find yourself on the other side with people around the world knowing who you are and what you do.
All right, you see what Steve is asking you right now, as far as, can you share some insights on how to better understand AR to our benefit?
So A over R is area over radius, and it's typically described as the size of a turbine housing. Mm-hmm. And from a mathematical perspective, a 1.0 AR is optimal. It has just the right amount of top end flow, just the right amount of bottom end flow, but it's always 1.0 AR. And there's pros and cons to that. If you were at a 0.6 AR, it'd probably spool a little faster and have a little less top end. And if you're at a larger than 1.0, like a 1.4, then you're going to spool a little bit later and have a little more top end. So you're biasing the housing one way or another. But at the end of the day, crunching the numbers, physically knowing how big is your engine displacement, what's your altitude, what's your max engine RPM, what's your boost, what's, going through these things. And Full Race does this every day. If you really want to know like what a particular turbo should do, we can crunch the numbers for you and help you figure out what is the output going to be. But at the end of the day, max RPM, engine displacement, volumetric efficiency, all these things matter. So I tend to prefer divided housings slightly above 1.0 AR or around 1.0 AR. If it's a race car, you might be going a little bigger, depending if it's a drag car or a road race or drift. AR is really a big factor, and it requires some thought and some analysis to choose.
Okay, here's my ignorance, and tell me how you, what you do to this. If you are going different places in the United States to race, how do you tune your turbo for that atmospheric deal or whatever? Is it all done through ECU? Do you need to make a change, a housing change? I mean, you got to carry a spare turbo. I'm asking.
It depends on what level of racing are you at. And so
yeah.
We're talking about Papadakis. He's #1 in Formula Drift. That is a hotly contested series. There's big budgets, and some guys are very competitive trying to be #1. And so Papadakis has 3 turbos on his trailer, 3 different size turbos. If he's at a small track like Englishtown, New Jersey, it's a figure 8 now. That would be the 8474, so the smallest turbo he's got. If he's on a big track like Irwindale, he's going to put the biggest turbo he's got because you can lay down the horsepower in that one final turn. And so it really depends. And what is the level of competition you're at? What's your setup? Now, me personally, I'm not a competitive guy. I just want to have fun on the weekend. So I have a turbo car. That's it. Run what you brung. But I'm not trying to win a national point series.
What do you think about that kind of approach right there? I mean, you're right in the middle of all this stuff. So what's it like down in the Florida area?
So, most of the tracks we race along the East Coast, we don't have a huge amount of elevation changes, but also in our trailer, we keep multiple exhaust housings, multiple turbochargers, One, just as a spare in case, I mean, anything can happen. You can suck something up. You can just, run metal through the oil if you have an engine failure. So you got to have, spares if you're trying to win any kind of big events, but, measuring the data, as Geoff said, is critical. And, we measure, we have a lot of sensors on our car, and we'll measure back pressure, EGTs, and we'll see which turbocharger do we feel is the most efficient for our race, our platform. So there, in a lot of the races we have unlimited turbocharger accessibility. So we could run a 98 or a 102 or a 110. So what's going to kind of work the best for us, on that weekend? Track prep also tends to be a big deal. Similar with drifting, they have a different course and they're trying to slide the car around. We're not trying to slide the car around. So if the track is hot and slimy, we may be better off using a smaller turbocharger, and focusing on our incrementals, just to be the best they can be, not to set any kind of record.
Okay, so guys, for myself, I've tuned in on this right here. I'm thinking about either expanding my business or I'm wanting to get in this business. Where can a guy go to learn what he needs to learn, especially when you have, let's just say, I know what a turbo is, I know what it's supposed to do, but like I say, from that point on, I'm dumb in a block of wood. So where do you go? I mean, Matt, do I call Full Race? Geoff, do I call you? I mean, what do I do here? I mean, guys, where can you go if you're curious right now? Who can give you the best advice? Again, we got 3 different entities happening here, and y'all have got a relationship. As you said, how do I get into club?
I get asked this a lot when I'm at the racetrack, and especially with a lot of young up and comers. They ask like, how'd you get into this? How'd you fall into it? I mean, one of the reasons I think Geoff and myself and Matt do these kind of podcasts is to educate the new generation. And I tell them that, they ask, is there a school? Is there a place to intern? And I tell them, I mean, the first thing is you to be in this industry, this subsect, you've got to live, eat, and breathe it. So if you really love it, read everything you do online, watch obviously a lot of YouTube podcasts, and start having your brain work around what works in the industry, what the brands are, how things are accomplished, but also don't believe everything you read and see on the internet either. So you have to have an objective mind, and you do that for a couple of years. You start hanging out at various car clubs, you get your clique of friends, and you start feeding off of each other. And before you know it, you could have a job at one of the performance aftermarket places. And if you have a business mind, you may at some point leave and start your own business up.
And I'd also add to that, if you have a specific application in mind and you're looking for help sizing a turbo, I would definitely say to call Full Race, and our sales guys can help you figure out exactly what you need.
What you, Geoff?
Yeah, that's honestly it. And I've realized that this webinar is going out to a lot of guys who are, whether fabricators or kit builders or shop owners or whatever. Truthfully, we're always looking for partners like Nero with the Supra. If you have a particular application that's going to need some serious development work or even just hardware support, that's what Full Race really does. So yeah, please reach out to our sales team. That is what we do all day, every day.
Well, if you haven't realized it, we do have a gentleman from Germany. He said hello to Nero to begin with, Theo Zimmerman. And he said, it was a very niche but big segment. But now that the B58 Supra, can you imagine going in also to BMW sector and offer stuff like this there? And how do you think this Toyota BMW coup will benefit both camps? So it sounds like somebody in the know in Europe.
So, a lot of the B58 stuff we do now does carry over. Obviously, Supra is the kind of in your face. That's always been an aftermarket icon. So that's what a lot of people follow. But, you can get some of the other BMWs with B58s, whether the entry point is cheaper. If you're looking for like kind of more of a sleeper, people don't realize, something you have modified. So there is a lot of carryover. Will we head into BMW heavily? Probably not. We'll probably stick with the Japanese import segment. But with the carryover, obviously we're already getting a lot of sales from people who don't have Toyota Supras. And I think the BMW partnership with Toyota, it's obviously working, right? The car is super popular. It's been hard to find them even at dealerships, so sales are good. BMW's always had a bit more of a luxury performance push than Toyota. So I think that's one of the reasons Toyota partnered with BMW, because, it's a little bit outside of Toyota's typical core, although they do have obviously the following, from the 90s from the prior Toyota Supra.
Yeah, and
So
to go
guys,
one point out. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say, go ahead and finish what you're saying, because I was getting ready to kind of go in a different direction here. Go ahead.
I was just going to carry on what he said about the B58 carrying over. There's a lot of cross chassis compatibility. I think what BMW brought to the table was really big in the way of the DCT, huge game changer. And also, as you see what BMW is now producing, the new M3s, M4s, a lot of people are really not loving the new M3, M4. And so the B58 rather than the S58 could very well be a more popular platform going forward. I know if I was personally going to go to a BMW dealership and pick up a car, I think the M3, M4s are hideous. The front end is so gross. Whereas you look at the B58 BMWs, it's like, that's a classic, gorgeous BMW. So I actually think this is a really good long-term positive.
And in regards to the aftermarket industry as well, I think this is a really interesting time because it's opening up traditionally German shops to the Japanese market, and traditionally Japanese shops are coming over to the German market a little bit. And I think anytime you have extra options and extra competition, it really inspires and motivates everyone to bring their A game and really pushes the industry forward. So I think it's great.
Well, speaking of it, pushing the industry forward, one of the things I was just, going to comment about is what's happening in this industry right now. Did it get a big shot in the arm when drifting started, kind of getting more popular on the West Coast? And whenever the Fast and Furious series kind of started showing up, because all of a sudden it wasn't always about Corvettes or Mustangs or something like that. It was showcasing, the Supra and some of the other, aftermarket stuff, I would say, from Europe that maybe a lot of people didn't really kind of consider as a hot rod. And you guys seem like you're right in the middle of making these guys like BMW. To me is almost like a, European Cadillac. My description would be. I mean, it's just a luxury type ride, smooth ride, and now all of a sudden people are wanting to hot rod it up and make it into, I don't know, something. Like you say, Jeff, it's a cool looking ride. And at the same time, now it's got, some get up and get, not to say it didn't, but now it's got even more.
I would say definitely the first Fast and Furious, brought a lot of the performance and racing for the sport compact segment into the mainstream, right? I mean, hundreds of millions of people watched the movie. And so that kind of advertising, I mean, there's nothing better. So it definitely shot up the market and made a lot of what, ourselves and the guys at Full Race were doing before. It validated it. It made it definitely mainstream, and we saw a definite spike in revenue from that. And I'd say drifting has continued to follow on with the drag racing scene, and there's a lot of professional drag racers that have moved to drifting, such as Papadakis, Bergenholtz, so a lot of those guys are involved, and that's added another layer to our sport.
Well, folks, we're getting about 10 minutes here left in this webinar. And so if you got any questions, please get them in. Really appreciate you, everybody joining us today. Thank you for ARP being a sponsor. And Steve Winkowski, He wanted to know, are there any tips on turbo inspections as far as, making sure that we don't have a problem getting ready to happen? Raymond, you're right. Cadillac is a high performance car now. So I stand corrected on that. And Rob from just wanted to let us know that he is enjoying the information discussion. And Nero, he loves your chair. I mean, that is pretty impressive. I got to say, a king at his throne right there. It looks pretty impressive for sure.
So we won this chair at the last race. It was part of the huge prizes that we did for running our Supra and X275 at Sweet 16, which is one of the biggest X275 races of the year. And Donald Long, who is the promoter, goes really above and beyond with the prizes. So yeah, we got the chair, we got the trophy. I mean, we got the check, so it was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm constantly enjoying using this thing whenever possible.
So what about the tips as far as inspecting a turbo to make sure you're not getting ready to have a failure? What do you have to be
I'll take
looking
that
for?
one right off the bat. If you can visually see the turbocharger and grab the shaft, like take the intake tube off, grab the shaft. If your wheel is hitting your housings, or if there's any scratching marks on your housings, your turbo is done. And it probably isn't going to be fixed. And to fix it is probably going to cost more than buying a new turbo. So right off the bat, grab the shaft, move it. There's going to be movement if there's no oil pressure, because that's what oil pressure does, is it stabilizes the shaft. But with engine off, definitely with engine off, do not put your finger anywhere near the turbo. Engine on, but engine off, grab the shaft, it's going to move. You need to spin it as it's moving and make certain that the wheels have not come into contact or are not coming into contact with the housing. So that's step number one. Step number two, typically most people complain that the turbos are smoky. And they're like, the turbo's bad, it's smoky. Well, in my experience, more often than not, smoking comes from two factors. One, a clogged oil drain line or excessive crankcase pressure. So you could have rings that are shot. You could have a kink in your oil drain tube back to the pan. Or you can have too much oil. So that could be too much oil pressure or too much oil volume. So you solve the volume with the restrictor. Most turbos now have them built in, so you shouldn't add one. But the second solution is to solve it by reducing oil feed pressure. So really that's what my advice is. If the turbo does not have wheel to housing contact, it's probably okay. There's some tolerance there, but if you're dealing with a major manufacturer, Garrett, Ford Warner, somebody who makes millions of turbos a year, it's probably okay. If you're dealing with a small shop with a mystery turbo, there's a good chance you could have some failures just because of quality control. So right off the bat, first question you should ask yourself is this made by a major company? If it is, then yeah, do traditional troubleshooting for your inspection. But if it's not made by a major company, then all bets are off. It's anybody's guess.
And I agree. A lot of the smoking is from the oil drain. Either sometimes that's sizing, sometimes that's a kink, a clog. And one thing to also look, you may have a nice AN hose, it may look good, but it could have collapsed also internally. So not just the quality of the turbo, but obviously the quality of the associated hardware can play a part in turbocharger failure.
Yeah, totally. Smear a bunch of RTV on your oil, return flange, and it looks great from the outside. The guy's like, "No, here's a picture," but then he pulls it off, and the whole thing's clogged with RTV. There's no oil draining, so I'll do it.
Got you. What about the air intake for those kind of for that? Is that critical also as far as the amount of your the outside air that's getting into the turbo itself?
Yeah, fresh, cool air, just like naturally aspirated, still the same for a turbo. The cooler it is coming in, the less work that the intercooler needs to do to take to exchange the heat. So just like anything else, unrestricted intakes and fresh, cool air.
Yeah, turbo inlet's probably one of the few cases where you can normally say bigger is going to be better within reason.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I was asking. That was one of the biggest things we did to my truck was to get it to have a little bit better, get up and get. And, the guy that worked on it, he worked on opening that up as much as he could to make it where it could get fresher air. And he had me change, the intake as well as a filter. He said how critical that could be. and which I've realized it, but I didn't realize how much I could feel it once I got it all put back together, that, we could go from a dually, all of a sudden now it's spinning the rear wheels. I mean, at some gun, I mean, it'll just about light them up, after you get it rolling, which, so all those things right there were a big thank you from me. But at the same time, I was really surprised how much work he had done. And he told me how much he had raised it as far as the overall power curve was concerned, but yet how much I could feel it. I mean, it was like, bam, I said, whoa, where'd that come from? So I can appreciate that, when you say how important that is. And Mike is asking us real quickly about high heat climates and an open air system in the engine bay better than the air coming from the outside.
It's still going to be hotter in the engine bay. But at this end of the day, some vehicles don't have the ability to gain airflow from the outside. So not everyone wants to hack into their car and put a hood scoop or something to do that. So the application is going to dictate where you can put the air filter. But yeah, at the end of the day, high heat climates are still going to be cooler outside than inside the engine.
But you can sometimes look at options like heat shielding to keep radiant heat away from exhaust systems, or to keep the flow coming out through your radiator away from the filter, which if you don't have the option of coming from outside the engine bay, it might help lower your temperatures a little bit.
And that's where the engine bay scan really helps, because Matt can manipulate all these things without using the car in front of them and physically making something. You can do it virtually.
Let's go back, and we'll ask one question here. As far as you talked about, don't have a one, I guess you might say a universal turbo that just bolts on everything. So guys, are you the guys you need to come to if you want help to get the right turbo to go on an application?
Yeah, that's
like an aftermarket type deal.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. That's a big percentage of our business.
All right. Well, that's great. I mean, again, the thing that gets me is that it's at our fingertips now, and folks like yourself, you're making big strides and showing results, not only on racetrack, but at the same time, it looks like on the street. So really appreciate your time and your knowledge and what you've been able to share with us today. And again, I know you've been on here before, and I know you'll be on here again. So what I'm saying to all of our attendees right now is make sure if you got a question, and I guess I'm saying this right, you got a question, you need to get hold of one of these three guys, and they'll make sure you don't waste a lot of time and waste a lot of money and get the result you're looking for. Am I saying that the right way?
Yeah, it works. This is our job every day. This is all we do.
Yep.
Well, it has been a pleasure. And I know, like I say, Judy, you've known these guys for a long time, and you have witnessed and seen their genius and their ability to basically influence what the future of the turbo world is going to be like.
Yeah, Geoff has always been very forward thinking to me. That's how I see him.
Thanks, Judy.
Fun to watch your company grow as well.
Appreciate it. Remember you coming to visit us many times over the years.
Yeah.
And if I can add, it's fun to see both, Titan and Full Race, work so closely together. That's really what's magical in this industry. It's, people think on one hand you have the supplier, on the other hand you have the buyers, but it's a lot more complex. And it's also an industry dominated by small businesses, small companies that just, focus on making the greatest products, offer the best services, and are racers. So you basically are the perfect example of what this industry is all about, made by racers for racers. So we love that. And thank you so much for being with us today. So the webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later on the EPARTRADE platform, as well as on our YouTube channel. We also pushed back to the homepage of EPARTRADE Full Race product. So please take advantage of it and you can connect with them. There is a website you wanted to promote, Geoff, correct? Should we say it one more time?
Yeah, full-race.com/wholesale. So that's, if any of you guys are shop owners, kit builders, fabricators, if you guys need anything turbocharger related, go to our site. You can fill out an application. We'll set you up with a wholesale account.
Beautiful. Excellent. So thank you for being with us. We will be back next week at 9 o'clock again, and we will be talking fuel cells and fuel tanks with Titan. So thank you very much, and let's go racing.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Registering on EPARTRADE is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use EPARTRADE as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to EPARTRADE.